You know, there's something about that song, and a lot of songs actually, as intense as some of those songs are, they actually get me settled into a vibe. And, you know, if you have a little tech thing happening like that, you want to recover quickly, you want to pull a Bon Jovi recovery like that, people eating food and getting punched Saturday Night Live skit. And there is something about that song that sort of settles one down. I don't know if you have a song that does that for you or a number of songs, but it almost does that every time for me. It gets me jazzed up about getting into the topic, but at the same time, there's a certain flow to it. And of course, nothing's going to stop the flow. So despite tech problems, you're sort of like, okay, I'm in the vibe. I want to do something before we go any further into this breaking news. I want to set the groundwork again with some context, going back a ways, just to make sure that we're all aware of this. For example, Daniel Davis reminds folks that Trump's own national security teams, what they said and what we know. Iran was not working on nuclear weapons, and yet they tried to pull that as one of their arguments.
A small part of that soundbite there, but it's not, and don't miss it. He said, unfortunately, the American people want us to get out. He considers that a problem to navigate and to associate or to get rid of. But he still then goes back again. But I think we should take the oil, which tells you he is not going to do this easily. He is not trying to get a negotiated settlement. Let's just be blunt and crystal clear. Make sure nobody is fooled by this, because they're attempting to fool you, and they want to couch this in all kinds of moralistic ways, which they've been doing periodically, scattershot and contradictory before, because they don't really care about it. They're just trying to put covering over it so that the truth is not put before your face, which is they just want to steal the resources of this country and turn them into a subservient vassal. Another country whose oil wealth we can steal. And so then now that's going to make us an even bigger power, oil power, and give us more control over the whole affairs of the global economy.
And Trump obviously has lost his gambit, and he's very upset about that. And as he said, it's completely scattershot. They will say anything, they will do anything at any moment and hope that we don't remember it. But we're here together. We can talk to each other. And let's go to the news notes right now. Obviously, the U.S. not only knew that the so-called pause agreement Trump officials made with Iran via Pakistan included a halt to attacking Lebanon. It's clear by the information trail that the U.S. actually gave that language to the Pakistanis, putting together the pause points for public dissemination. Trump, Vance, Leavitt, and others continue to lie sufficiently, or cannot lie sufficiently to hide their own awareness of this fact and their participation in the actual agreement. So here are some quotes from DD Geopolitics. Confirmed, the White House reviewed and approved a social media post by Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, which explicitly stated that Lebanon was part of the ceasefire agreement. However, after Israel bombed Lebanon, the Trump administration backtracked, claiming, and we'll go forward with more, claiming that Lebanon had not been included in the deal. So we see this from the New York Times. Whoa, shocker, I'm blinded, completely blinded. Another up and down and flip-flop, another inversion, another complete lie from the White House. White House knew about Pakistan's ceasefire post on X before it was sent. Yeah, no kidding. And yet Caroline Leavitt said that even after Donald Trump posted that it was a great agreement, it was a terrible agreement, according to Donald Trump, and he threw it in the trash. We've got her on video at the White House today saying it at 1 p.m. Here's more. Here's Shehbaz Sharif saying, with the greatest humility, I am pleased to announce that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America, along with their allies, have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon. Oh, what's this? Diplomatic efforts for peaceful settlement of the ongoing war in the Middle East are progressing steadily, strongly. And look, at Real Donald Trump, at JD Vance, at Steve Witkoff, at Marco Rubio, at Peace Missions. What? How is that ever possible? How could that ever be? And there's more. This one, DD Geopolitics mentions this. Behind the scenes, the White House had already seen and signed off on the statement before Mr. Sharif posted it, according to a person briefed on the communication, a sign that the diplomatic channels were much more active than the message on social media suggested. That's interesting, isn't it? Why is it then that we see lies, as the Thompson twins might have said, even though we get actual wording from Pakistan's ambassador to the U.S., overtly saying this? Here's video from CNN.
Israel has continued to attack Lebanon, saying it is not part of this ceasefire, despite your Prime Minister, Sharif, saying it is. Can you clarify what the parties of this war have agreed to there? And are you concerned Israel could derail the broader ceasefire agreement at this point?
Well, as the description and understanding has come from the highest level in Pakistan, so it could not have been more authentic in terms of the offer made by the Prime Minister and accepted by the two conflicting parties of affording a ceasefire for 2 weeks. So it could not have been more authentic, and the understandings associated with it could not have been more true. But of course, this is a situation of a ceasefire that could be disrupted, and there have been instances in the past where ceasefires have been disrupted. So we perhaps would all want for the best to happen.
So you're confirming that, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, that Lebanon is included in this ceasefire, despite what we have heard from the Prime Minister's office in Israel today?
Well, as Pakistan is a faithful facilitator, I think the understandings coming from the highest level in Pakistan need to be accorded primacy and certainly authenticity.
All right.
So the answer
is yes. The answer is yes. Just stunning. It's so simple. It's so basic that even people like the lie-prone Jen Psaki are on the right side on this one. Here's Furkan Gusukara with the double umlauts saying exactly this. And he writes it. He always has these openings that are very bombastic. Absolute bombshell. Jen Psaki exposes how Benjamin Netanyahu intentionally sabotaged the ceasefire by launching massive strikes on Lebanon. She reveals J.D. Vance is desperately trying to cover up Israel's rogue aggression as a mere misunderstanding. Total chaos.
Given what we've seen in Lebanon today and the increased attacks from Israel, I mean, is there any concern that Netanyahu is trying to kill the ceasefire?
Of course there should be a concern. I mean, Netanyahu reportedly convinced Trump to start this war to begin with, something he tried with other presidents in the past, while Netanyahu was somehow meeting in the Situation Room, according to new reporting. And the United States and Israel have had different objectives from the beginning, which is a huge flag and has always been. And even when you get down to the details of how the flimsy deal came together yesterday, the Pakistani prime minister, who has been acting as a mediator of the negotiations, specifically mentioned the ceasefire would also take effect in Lebanon. And then within hours of the ceasefire, Israel launched the largest waves of attacks on Lebanon in weeks and claimed Lebanon wasn't a part of the ceasefire. Then J.D. Vance claimed today it was all somehow a misunderstanding. All sounds pretty sketchy to me, Maya, and I have the perfect person to ask about all of it.
Given what we've seen in Lebanon.
Yes, I hate to say she didn't approach me, but that's okay. I don't want to be called Guard Psaki. It's Jen Hacky Psaki, news reporterette. But she did a good job there. And I want to give you even more because the exposure of this, I think, is really, really worthwhile from a number of fronts, a number of different vectors coming in here that I want to show to you. Some of this I recorded while it was on live. Some of this is actually available in its own X feed, and you can find it yourself. And I've retweeted a lot of these things. But I want to show you particular lines that I think are valuable here that come from folks like Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams and folks like Max Blumenthal and others. So let me give you some of this stuff right here. Here's Vance and Levitt, their massive exposure of massive lies. So here's Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul from the Ron Paul Liberty Report today.
Remember, Trump just said, I got Iran's proposal. It's a good basis to start conversation. And now go and do that third video. Listen to Carolyn Levitt.
Coverage today from the media about these negotiations and these plans already. So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this
They just said Trump's quote.
Yeah, Trump said, it's a good start. It's a good start. She said, no.
So literally, you can quote Trump, who put a social media post out that said, this is a good start. I'm proud to announce this. She comes in and says that agreement was garbage. He threw it in the trash. He literally threw it in the trash. She overtly contradicts what Donald Trump said earlier in the evening, Monday night. Unbelievable.
Threw it in the garbage.
I think she works with Trump, doesn't she?
I mean, they almost as if they think we're idiots.
Yeah.
They lied like this to us.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It's Tuesday night. So, yeah, it's just the lies are unbelievable. And J.D. Vance at the airport is the same way. These people, J.D. Vance, it was clearly a misunderstanding. Really? It was a misunderstanding? Is that right? How is it a misunderstanding? I don't understand, JD. How is that possible? It's absurd. Of course it's not a misunderstanding. They lied. Now I want to give you a little bit more on this. Let's go to what has happened with at least 254 people killed, over 1,000 people wounded in these massive Israeli attacks on Lebanon. And, of course, Anti-War covers the latest killings by the IDF with this headline. First, deadly Israeli strikes continue as Lebanon reels from Wednesday massacres. News from antiwar.com. Dave DeCamp doing a great job. He was on a couple shows today. He was on Redacted. He was also on a little earlier with Danny Haifong. And here's this. Deadly Israeli strikes. Israel continued with its attacks, as you might expect. Sorry if this is sounding like a broken record, but this is just stunning what has happened. And the video that is out there is incredible. Israel continued with its attacks on Lebanon today, following by far the single deadliest day in the war on Wednesday, in which at least 254 people were killed and over 1,100 others were wounded. Lebanon has declared a national day of mourning today as they continue to search for survivors in the rubble. Just stunning, absolutely unmistakably evil, just unbelievably bad. And I want to show you some more here because this is really something else. Remember what J.D. Vance said. I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. That's what he said.
First of all, I actually think, and there's a lot of bad faith negotiation and a lot of bad faith, propaganda going on. I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that.
So obviously he's lying. And his excuse is going to be, oh, I didn't know. I was in Europe. And so I misspoke. I wasn't informed enough. That'll be his excuse. J.D. Vance. If that's his excuse, then he shouldn't be vice president. Or he should say, I can't comment on that. I don't have enough information. But clearly, he was lying, as he so often does, as he did when he swore an oath to the Constitution when he first entered the Congress. J.D. Vance, an utter liar. And here are some more lies. What's the rationale for why the United States is going in there? This coming from an actual short clip from Daniel Davis where he refutes and shows us that Admiral Brad Cooper is lying as well.
Hi, I'm Admiral Brad Cooper, Commander of U.S. Central Command. Less than 6 weeks ago, more than 50,000 of America's sons and daughters in uniform launched Operation Epic Fury and embarked on a mission of profound consequence.
Let's pause right there. 6 weeks ago, all those sons and daughters, they're your sons and daughters too, right? There's the anthropomorphized. Their skin color is red, white, and blue. Just remember that. That's all that matters. They're patriotic Americans. So how can you possibly say to them, hey, by the way, you took a friggin' oath to the Constitution and you should not have accepted any such orders, and you shouldn't be taking money off of my back or off the back of my children. That's offensive. You people in your patriotic ways telling us that you're fighting for America, and all these people call and talk radio. Thank you for your service. What service to what? Breaching the Constitution repeatedly? Oh, they allowed themselves to get deployed. How heroic.
Out to dismantle the Iranian regime's ability to project power beyond its own borders.
So in other words, the United States military projected power unconstitutionally beyond its own borders to attack a sovereign nation and its civilian population and their infrastructure on behest of people like Benjamin Netanyahu, lied about the rationales with varying rationales, as many as you could possibly fit on a 20-sided die for Dungeons and Dragons. And this guy's talking about how great this mission was. This is what we're up against. Anytime somebody says these things, of course, I got to back off and calm down a little bit, but just try to talk to people reasonably and say, do you think maybe there could be some questions here? Do you think it's okay to ask some questions about the oath, about whether it's moral to force me to pay for this, about whether or not maybe there's a bit of hypocrisy here, pot calling the kettle black? What do you think about that? Do these questions pop in your mind? And if it makes you uncomfortable, don't worry about it. You don't need to answer. That's okay, because you've already given them some of the thoughts, right? Well, here's Daniel Davis.
And we clearly accomplished this task.
No.
Iran has suffered a generational military defeat. The United States and Israel systematically destroyed Iran's ability to conduct large-scale military operations for years to come.
Really? That's interesting. If that's the case, then one may reasonably ask Admiral Cooper, President Trump, if that is a generational defeat of historic proportions, why are you seeking a ceasefire again? If you could just kind of help me out a little bit here. I'm obviously missing something. The stuff at that high level I just apparently can't grasp. That's a lie. That's again, that is intended for you, Americans, us, to make you believe that we are this great and powerful military. But just look at it logically. If we had done that, why would we have even entertained a ceasefire? You don't reach a ceasefire from a position of strength.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I'm just going to go back there and show a little freeze.
It's a lie.
Okay, so yeah, when Colonel Davis, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, hit his chest a little bit, made me think about some of my friends who did go into the military, thought they were doing the right thing, and went through all sorts of stuff, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever, right? And people like Tony Arterburn, and hopefully, as you might know, Tony's father was in the hospital last we knew. So if you can pray for Tony's father, that would be great. David Knight mentioned it on the show today, and so people like Tony, people like others, like Daniel Davis, you look at that guy physically and you think about how his perspective being in the military, and many people who've gone into the military, they're going to have a slightly different set of skills, an experiential set. Everyone's experiences are different, but in the military, they go through certain training. They go through certain things where they put their body through stresses. They go through certain things where they put their mind through stresses that are unique to military service, or pretty unique, pretty close to unique. And so I can imagine what it must be like from his perspective to see see these guys and know that they have seen this sort of stuff before from military brass. And as you know, if you know anybody who's in the military, you know that people who are in the higher ups in the military have very, very brown noses. That's the way that you rise in the ranks beyond a certain level. And that's what that Admiral Cooper is like. He's utterly lying. And he's lying to the American people about an action by the U.S. government that is so unconstitutional, it's ridiculous. I want to show you a little something that sort of puts this all into perspective. I think you might appreciate this. This is a fun one. Check this out. This is a 10 out of 10, hitting almost all the points, I think, yes.
All right, I'm not sure why we're all still having trouble with this. Let's try it again from the top. This is a victory for the U.S. because our goal from day one was for Iran to open the strait that didn't close till after we attacked, which was completely controlled by their military we had total dominance over. And it was a waterway that we could have taken over, but instead asked for help that we didn't need, but we'll remember that our allies did not give us, all because of the negotiating power of a FIFA Peace Prize recipient's threat to annihilate a civilization in order to liberate them from a regime that changed, which was not our goal, but we will take credit for, from an old man who hates us to his younger son who hates us for those reasons and that we killed his father. And while it is not clear the status of Iran's nuclear capabilities that we obliterated last year, but we're going to be a problem in 2 weeks, one thing is for sure. They now have more money and control of the strait than they had when they made the old deal that we ended because it was terrible. Now, I think that is enough about authoritarian propagandistic regimes. Does anybody have any questions about the Trump Library golden statue?
That's awesome. Over at Rumble, we got some great comments at Rumble. Smuhosky was there. And Dagnar. Oh, man. Yes, Dagnar says, explain it to me. How does our Constitution apply to Iran? Yes, Smuhosky says, Russia, China, and Pakistan are currently supporting Iran. Pull out. Stop this nonsense now. They could get a nuke with a phone call. Yeah. Tony, people who are comfortable lying and do so often allow lies to cover their own deceit, something advertisers capitalize on. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you. Keep pumping out those great comments. We'll get back and read some more of these. And Gonzo Johnny says, and the rules we follow, we do to escape being punished. That is the sad truth. So many Americans, unfortunately, don't even think that the United States rules even matter. And for many Americans, as you say, they only comply because they will be punished. They will be punished. I want to go to the judge and Max Blumenthal, who had some breaking and very good insights this afternoon, about an hour and a half ago, on the judge's program. Check this out. This pertains to the lies coming out of the White House about this agreement, the deaths, and these egregious, unbelievable, way, way beyond what we've seen already, attacks on the poor people of Lebanon. Because, of course, as we know, they were going after Hezbollah. That's why they had to kill people at a funeral procession and blast people at hospitals and apartment complexes. You know how that goes.
Vice President saying just what you said, Max. Oh, it was just a misunderstanding. Chris, cut number 22.
I actually think, and there's a lot of bad faith negotiation and a lot of bad faith, propaganda going on. I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. That said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful. That's not because that is part of the ceasefire. I think that's the Israelis trying to set us up for success. And we'll, of course,
we're talking about an epic fail, huh?
See how that unfolds in the next few days. But look, if Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
truth in what he just said?
I mean, we were told J.D. Vance was the one who engineered this ceasefire, working with China, which has normal diplomatic relations with Iran and somewhat normal relations with the U.S. So they're like a key broker here. But you can see from his comments that he's very poorly informed. And these comments are disqualifying for J.D. Vance as a president, and that he is lying. He's just lying through his teeth, because the terms are right there on Prime Minister Sharif's X account, and it included Lebanon. And Lebanon does not have nothing to do with Iran or the broader conflict. It was Israel that decided to launch a ground invasion into Lebanon after it secured U.S. support, basically secured the U.S. as a proxy force for attacking Iran. So it was Israel that launched the assault on Lebanon and made Lebanon a part of the war. It is Hezbollah that's defending Lebanon from Israel. And it is Israel that decided to blow up the ceasefire by attacking Lebanon. And so J.D. Vance is not only being dishonest, he's presenting a version of reality that flips on its head what Israel is doing before everyone's eyes. And so this is disqualifying for Vance. I feel very concerned about Vance supposedly offsetting the ideologically Zionist negotiators, Witkoff and Kushner, who are going to Islamabad. I don't even know if J.D. Vance will be present there. And of course, he's what it was. It looked like he was speaking from Hungary, from Budapest, because he was sent off to campaign for Orban to get him out of the way. So how much latitude does he even have here?
Now, there's more, but I want to show you the Israeli side of this, because these beasts in the Knesset and the Netanyahu administration are just, they're not only showing their deceptiveness with Bibi and the Orwellian "we kill to protect" in Lebanon mindset, but you'll see that others within the administration, people like Smotrich, are openly saying, not only are we going to take all sorts of land even further north than the Litani River, they obviously want it all. And here is Netanyahu's unbelievably screechable, just irrepressibly evil statements. Bibi is continuing his "we kill to protect" nonsense regarding Lebanon, noting that there is no ceasefire, as, of course, we kind of figured out yesterday morning. So this comes from the official X feed of these people. And this is in his language. So let me just read this to you. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, quote, "Dear residents of the North," that would be Lebanon, a separate country, "I am proud of you. You continue to stand firm." So what he means is the people who have occupied the southern portion of that area, who have taken the land, like they took the land from the Palestinians over decades and decades and decades. You continue to stand firm. I am proud of you. I wish to inform you there is no ceasefire in Lebanon. We are continuing to strike Hezbollah with full force, and we will not stop until we restore your security. That would be the security of occupiers. Again, the gaslighting continues, and they claim it's for safety and security that they engage in terrorism and mass murder. Let's go back to the at least 254 killed and 1,100 wounded in the attacks. This is the other report that is at the anti-war main page. Jason Ditz wrote this yesterday. The ink was barely dry on last night's 2-week ceasefire, a pause, with Iran when Israel began what is their largest scale attack on Lebanon since the war began, with IDF spokesman Ajave Adrei saying Israel carried out strikes on over 100 targets in just 10 minutes, as we reported. That reportedly involved 160 bombs being dropped in Lebanon. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz presented it as a surprise attack on hundreds of Hezbollah members. Well, if it was on hundreds of Hezbollah members, then why are there so many people killed? This, of course, is something that they were planning on doing sometime down the line because they want the land, as Israel Katz has openly stated. Carol Cadwalder says, this is what Israel's defense minister says about Lebanon. Israel will destroy all houses and villages in the border region according to the Gaza model. There is no secret here. The only thing not in plain view is the international outcry. This is the so-called defense minister of the occupation force. How can an occupation force have a defense force? That's impossible. Quote, all houses in villages near the border in Lebanon will be destroyed. That would be over the border, away from already the encroaching Israel. That would be in Lebanon, according to the model of Rafah and Bet Hanun in Gaza, where they've conducted genocide to remove once and for all the threats, because, of course, they're the threats, just like we depicted, the United States government depicted Iran as the threats near the border to northern residents. Of course. Then we've got Smotrich with a $sign. Finance Minister of Israel Bezalel Smotrich announces that Israel will begin expanding its borders into Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. But I just thought it was defensive. We just heard from the defense minister in alignment with the Greater Israel Project. Shadow of Ezra has this, and this will be the second to last piece before we head on into one other aspect and then go into Gaza and round off the warfare coverage. Finance Minister of Israel Bezalel Smotrich announces that Israel will begin expanding its borders into Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza in alignment with the Greater Israel Project. He says this is the only viable solution to ensure Israel is well protected. That's exactly. I must kill you to protect myself. And I'm the defender. You see? You haven't done anything to me. I just want more land. He adds that many more settlements will be established in the near future. Gee, what a shock. There will be a lot of work for all of us after the war, he says. So, of course, we can read it. He's got his wonderful screechy voice. But yes, he says the extraordinary work of the defense establishment and its branches, commanders, and fighters, and all, it is including diplomatic leg. There is a concluding diplomatic leg in Judea and Samaria that completely kills the idea of dividing the land and establishing a terror state in its heart. There will be a concluding diplomatic leg in Gaza that will expand our borders. There will be a concluding diplomatic leg in Lebanon that will expand our borders to the Litani River, to defensible borders. That will be a concluding diplomatic leg in Syria, in the Mount Hermon. And yes, there is a military leg. There is a diplomatic leg. Both are legs of bravery, determination, and strength. So he's claiming that there's a diplomatic side to the genocide. You see, after they kill everybody and take their land, then there'll be some diplomacy with, the people who are left alive. Of course. I mean, to even use the term diplomacy is disgusting, but Randy Fine is right on top of it. He's right there with it. In an interview today on television this morning, Randy Fine argues that Israel's attacks on Lebanon aren't actually attacks on Lebanon because, quote, Israel is not attacking Lebanon. Israel is attacking Hezbollah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense.
And right on the screen here, we have a live look of Beirut, Lebanon. And of course, attacks have continued there. Yesterday was the deadliest day in attacks that we've seen in the latest Israel-Hezbollah war. You're one of the few Jewish members of Congress, staunch supporter of Israel, its right to defend itself, of course. Do you support their continued deadly strikes on Lebanon and their argument that the ceasefire doesn't apply there? And do you think it risks a fracture with the White House during this war?
There's a lot of questions there. The key question is, does it risk a fracture with the White House? I would say no. The president has been very clear. The ceasefire with Iran did not include Hezbollah. So no.
So there you go. They're all pushing this line. They're all pushing an absolute lie. And again, you can't pull the German rhetoric of if you repeat a lie and make it big enough and repeat it enough, people will believe it. Because we can share the real information with each other, and we're more numerous than they are. So let's continue.
I don't think it fractures that at all. But Israel is not attacking Lebanon. Israel is attacking Hezbollah. And Lebanon had an obligation.
So let me just ask you, even if Israel were attacking Hezbollah, would that be justified? No, because Hezbollah is the defense force that was created to fight the encroaching occupying force of the Zionist state. So even if the Zionist occupiers were attacking Hezbollah, that wouldn't be an excuse either. And none of it is allowable under ethics for you to be forced to pay for it. At every level. Why don't they ask Randy Fine, hey, Randy, should my neighbor be forced to pay for any of this stuff? Well, yes, absolutely. Why? Because otherwise I'll kill him. Really? Well, how does that work? Well, you see, if he decides he wants to keep the fruits of his own earnings without giving it up to the giant Israeli mafia in Washington, well, then we'll cite him. We'll tell him he's got to go to court. The tax people will come after him. And then, well, if he doesn't want to pay the taxes, then we'll send people to cite him and get him to come to court. If he doesn't want to come to court, then we'll go to his house with agents of the state, IRS agents who can now be armed, federal forces, maybe even the FBI. What if he just wants to be left alone in his house? No, you don't understand. That's not the way the land of the free doesn't allow people to live in peace in their homes. Don't you understand? We've got to protect those people. So how are you doing it? By forcing those people to open their homes to us so we can get their tax money. What if he doesn't want to open his home? Well, we're going to break down those doors and we're going to take him out of his home. What if he decides to defend himself in his home? Well, you see, that's offense against us, you see. You see, we represent legitimacy, and his attempt to defend himself against our aggressive encroachment into his home is obviously really an act of aggression because he doesn't agree with our magic Rousseauian. We came up with this idea out of the General Assembly out of Washington, and he should really conform to it. How dare he want to be an individual? And if he doesn't want to open the door, we'll bust it down. And if he happens to try to defend himself with a knife or a gun or anything like that in his house, well, of course, that will be depicted as him being offensive against us who represent America. So he obviously has to die because he didn't want to pay for the land of the free. See, it works. It totally makes a lot of sense, Randy. Thank you for getting my pay and eating it up. And don't forget, Randy's such a cool cat that when he was in Florida, he was pressing all those buttons of people who weren't at their voting stations and voting for them, even though they didn't know he was doing that. He's a class act. He knows just what honesty's all about. Well, another really classy guy, although he has been okay on a couple things regarding the immigration front and due process, is Chucky Schumer. Hey, Chuck, if I don't want to pay for your support of Israel, what happens? Yep, Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer is angry with Trump about Iran. Hey, no, you probably heard it. He's angry because he doesn't think Trump has been harsh enough on Iran. Yeah, he insinuates more of the same Iran is going for nuclear weapons myth that they keep trying to push. So, of course, the more aggressive they are against Iran, the more they incentivize Iranian politicians to push for nuclear weaponry. Yeah, so Chuck Schumer is upset because he doesn't think Trump has been hawkish enough. There you are. That's it. Now, this one needed a little bit of extra volume. So the production team and I got together and we put together a little something rocking for you here. Let me make sure I got this for you. And it should be right in here in our schedule. Let's make sure I've got it. Yeah, okay, here it is. Here's Chucky. Here's Chucky with the volume uppy.
The bottom line is that Iran still has its nuclear stockpile. its nuclear ambitions. Iran still has its nuclear stockpile. Its nuclear ambitions are still unchecked.
Okay, so again, he insinuates that their nuclear ambitions are for weapons. They have never shown that. In how many years? Since they signed many, many agreements, and at least since Obama, they overtly stuck with an agreement that the United States dumped when Trump came into office at the behest of Zionists as he pushed for the Abraham Accords. Zionists who support Chuck Schumer, of course.
If not accelerated. And finally, American credibility. The nations of the world are furious at Trump. The Europeans, the Asians, even the Middle Eastern allies. They say, what the hell is he doing? And the United States diplomatic position and credibility in the world is dramatically worse because of this war.
I wonder, let me ask you, and drop your comments inside Rumble, everybody. What would contribute? This is a fairly obvious question, obviously. But what would contribute to an increase in, say, the image of United States legitimacy around the world? What would bolster that? What possibly could it be? Oh, I don't know, maybe. Well, let me ask you, what would bolster United States legitimacy and its image around the world? Gonzo Johnny's, he says, I don't think pulling diplomats matters. Brad Souter says, do we need to bomb Kentucky? They just made nuclear energy legal. Did they negotiate with the Pakistanis? Because I think Donald Trump thought that was a good idea at first, but he has since thrown it in the trash. Oh, man. Spirit of the Age says, what is up, Chuck saying? We failed and need to get back to killing? Oaktown Girl says, Schumer has never not been totally despicable. Oh, man. MOE, good to see you, man. He says, America has desecrated the SHI out of the name Abraham. Boy, is that a great point. Wow. That's a great point, dude. Absolutely. And, you know, it's like they do this stuff on purpose. And clearly the Zionists who attach themselves to this greater Israel Project mythology know that they're riding on the backs of Christian ideology that is aberrant, and they're taking advantage of this and taking advantage of people's belief that they have to support a state of Israel, and they're misreading the Bible. That, imagine trying to manipulate people about their religion, right? Oh, no, God wants you to, like, wow, that's, wow. And Jason Barker says, all Chuck does for a job is read prepared statements that were likely written by someone else. Now, over on X, Smoove is in the house. Trump has behavioral variant frontal temporal dementia. He is a danger to human health. Yeah, absolutely. And he was a danger back in his first term to human health with his Operation Warp Speed. Again, you know, I was happy that I saved the warp speed thing at Voyager. And now I'm thinking, like, it's a bad legacy. And I mean, maybe it's a little flip, but I always loved Star Trek, and warp speed was such a cool concept, you know, warping time and space to be able to get across galaxies. It was so cool. And then Trump had to use it. I mean, it's so small on complaints, but it still does bother me. Now I got this, while Israeli politicians offer empty rhetoric about holding talks with Lebanon's political leadership. It's just cover, as they openly state they will continue to kill. Headline, Israel to open direct talks with Lebanon, but not halt attacks on Hezbollah. I tell you what, I will not be punching anybody with this hand. Boom, 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 boom. Watch this hand. Boom. And this is from the Washington Post. Oh, man. While insisting that Israel's attacks on Hezbollah and Lebanon would continue, Prime Minister Netanyahu said Thursday that he had authorized direct talks with Lebanon. Is there anybody left to talk to? It's so insulting. No, of course you're not. You're just saying that. You're not going to talk to anybody. And of course, while Fox portrays one of the most egregiously evil bombings in Lebanon conducted by Israel as rooting out Hezbollah, the IDF bombed an outdoor funeral gathering, for goodness sake. Look at this. And of course, the double umlaut comes through. Furqan Gozukara. Check this out. This is just amazing.
The Israelis have been tearing up Lebanon in the meantime, rooting out Hezbollah for good. The White House says Lebanon isn't a part of the deal, and the Jews can whack proxies. But Iran threw a hissy fit.
Now, so when he goes home, let's say he's got a family, a wife, kids, right? And I'm going to say this directly. I care about the truth. And I wonder, I certainly wonder, and since my tax money is being taken to fund this verbal offal, to put forward connections between Fox News's Levin and Trump, who says, hey, watch Levin tonight. How do you know what's going to be on Levin? Because they're coordinating. That's why. Because Fox is an arm of state propaganda. At least RT tells you where they're getting their money. But this is in my mind. I say, how can you go home and your kids might think, hey, Dad, what you said about a hissy fit from Iran, they're actually right. What do you say to your kid? I don't know. Go to your room. No social media for you. I don't understand. And of course, they're going back to the J.D. Vance thing, and they're not questioning the fact that he overtly lied twice in that statement. Oh, it's just a misunderstanding. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it was not part of the original deal. No, it wasn't a misunderstanding, and it was part of the original deal. And the third lie, well, I heard that Israel's going to pull back a little bit. Well, they didn't do that today, did they, JD? What does pull back mean? Glenn Greenwald says this: whenever Israel goes, this is the result. They assign no value to human life except for the dominant and supreme group that rules the country, along with the land they are stealing in the West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. Just like we saw straight out of Smotrich. He named all those places. We're going to take all that land, and we're going to be diplomatic about it after we kill people and occupy the land. We'll have diplomacy, but it's military, 2 legs. Okay, sure thing, if you say so. Let's go back to the judge and get some more with the judge and Max Blumenthal. Additional key moments.
Here's Netanyahu insisting that Lebanon was not part of the deal, but boasting about his bombs and killings. Chris, number 19.
I have said that I've insisted that the ceasefire with Iran does not include Lebanon, and this is what is happening. Today, we have dealt Hezbollah the biggest blow that it has suffered since the pager operation. We targeted 100 command sites, headquarters, in 10 minutes. They didn't know what happened.
All right.
For the first time in modern history, college...
And we'll go back to the judge. All right.
Let's see. Are those places that you articulated a funeral home, a park, the famous Corniche, a shopping center, and residential neighborhoods in the suburbs, command centers? Come on.
Well, they thought they were going to score this masterstroke. And so they dialed up their explosives. They launched 100 sorties, 100 strikes with 65 jets in 10 minutes. And they thought they were going to get Hezbollah General Secretary Naim Qassem. And they failed and wound up blowing up several apartment buildings filled with civilians, just as they did in order to kill Ali Larijani, who was the key negotiator for Iran. when Israel assassinated him, it attacked, I think, 5 separate locations, slaughtering well over 50 civilians. So what Israel has done is continued to expose itself as a mass killing machine, which is not doing well on the ground in southern Lebanon. Israel's ground invasion has been stalled. Its objectives have been rolled back. They're announcing that they're not actually going to seek to occupy all the land up to the Litani River. They're taking lots of casualties. There have been complaints from the Israeli General Command that the army is essentially falling apart and that reservists aren't showing up. It's effectively a mercenary army where soldiers have to be paid to show up. They've lost helicopters. They're concealing losses. The Merkavas are getting hit by FPV drones for the first time. We didn't see this at this level during the last round. And now they're going to try to take Bint Jebel, which is a real strong point, a central node of Hezbollah's Radwan forces. And Israel was unable to take this area in the 2006 war. It actually wasn't even held off. It was held off by local Hezbollah guardsmen. So what they're doing is compensating, or I should say overcompensating for their losses on the ground. Israel as a military isn't so great on the ground. They have some good special forces, but they're essentially an assassination and killing machine that relies entirely on U.S. firepower. And so all they're able to do is these performative slaughters in order to blow up the ceasefire while they continue to control Donald Trump and hold his administration by the short and curlies.
I realize that the IDF and the Israeli government is very heavy-handed with respect to censorship.
Yeah.
But do you know from any sources how badly Israel has been damaged by Iranian missiles and drones?
Well, it wouldn't be Israel per se, given the way that Iran has gone about targeting. It would be the U.S. And this is what's something key to understand here about how Iran is waging this war. The U.S. is hiding. I would use the term hiding, or it's sheltering its F-35s at the Nevatim Air Base and some other key aerial assets at Ben Gurion International Airport. Israel's air defenses are much more concentrated and therefore more effective than what we've seen in Saudi Arabia, where the U.S. has lost AWACS, aerial radar systems on the ground. They've lost C-130 Hercules transport planes on the ground. They've lost billion-dollar radar systems that are their eyes and ears in at Al Udeid Air Base. And you'll see like these bases will be hit and THAAD systems aren't even going off. Patriot missiles aren't even in the air. Nevatim Air Base remains a mystery to us, though, where the F-35s are being housed. And when you see it come under attack, it's often from a Khorramshahr missile with cluster warheads. So maybe the propellant system of the missile will get intercepted, but the cluster warheads come down on Nevatim Air Base and they hit something there, but we don't know what it is. The censorship is so extreme. And you remember, Judge, you interviewed Jeremy Lafredo, who was reporting for the Gray Zone when he was arrested inside Israel and initially put on trial for spying. Fortunately, he was able to get out. These charges were completely bogus. And what had he done? One of the only things he did was he went outside Nevatim Air Base, well outside. He never tried to get in, and took a picture of a ballistic missile that had landed nearby during, I think it was Operation True Promise 2 that Iran waged in retaliation for Israeli attacks. So that tells you how strict the censorship is, that if anyone even attempts to take pictures of the attacks on Nevatim, they face spying charges, treason, and could go to jail for life. So we don't know if the F-35s have been hit, but then we have to ask the question, why did an F-15E go down in Iran if the F-35 is supposed to be sort of the undefeatable stealth aircraft? Could it be because they've lost several of them on the ground? Again, we don't know. This is up to, OSINT, open source sleuths, other reporters.
So I'll stop there. And of course, this amount of money that they're spending on this is just the insult capped on top of all the death. just incredible, the assumptions that they make about these things. Just unbelievable. And Glenn Greenwald, again, I want to point this out. This is a very good point, and he has Sarah here. Whenever it should be wherever Israel goes, this is the result. Sarah says, Israel killed every single child in this photo today alone in Lebanon. Every single one. More than 18 children massacred in less than 24 hours. Now, this is one of these things where nowadays one has to be very careful. Obviously, all of these things could be AI, right? But I am going to say that I believe this. And I'm also going to mention that regardless of if this even were AI, right? We know that these AI images could be representative of, if they were, could be representative of real people in those buildings. And there is so much footage of such destruction that it looks like Gaza. So let's go to Gaza. Here's this headline. Israeli attack kills Al Jazeera journalist in Gaza. And that, of course, this while Israel kills more residents of Gaza. So what is one to expect? Dave DeCamp doing yeoman's work. An Israeli attack on Gaza, in Gaza on Wednesday, killed an Al Jazeera reporter, adding to the massive number of journalists the IDF has killed in Gaza and elsewhere in the region since the start of its genocide campaign in the Palestinian territory. Mohammed Missa, a correspondent for Al Jazeera and Mubashir, Al Jazeera and Mubashir, was hit by an Israeli drone strike while driving his car in an area west of Gaza City. The Palestinian Journalist Syndicate said after Wisha's death that the IDF has killed 260 Palestinian journalists and wounded 550 since October 7th, 2023. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, 129 members of the press were killed around the world in 2025, and the state of Israel was responsible for 2/3 of the deaths. Now, what I would like to know is, we showed Jen Psaki before. Why didn't Jen Psaki speak up in 2023? Where was she? The IDF has a unit, because now she's a journalist. Maybe that would make a difference. The IDF has a unit that is dedicated to justifying the killing of journalists by attempting to link them to Hamas. And of course, even if they were, again, just like with Hezbollah, that would be defensive, not offensive, on a state-to-state level. And the IDF has previously accused Wisa of being a Hamas fighter, an allegation denied by Al Jazeera. They'll continue to do it. And of course, you can go to the antiwar.com main page and see a lot more stories. There's a big poll there. You can see 60% of Americans have unfavorable view of Israel. And I'm not going to go into the poll too much. Then there's that story about Trump threatening 50% tariffs on countries that arm Iran. And of course, the one U.S. new Iran ceasefire deal included Lebanon, of course.